All right, welcome everybody. Aesop Grimm here, and this is the intro video for A Plague Tale: Innocence, the chronicle that is going to begin releasing on Friday, this Friday, February 11th, I think it is. Look at the calendar real quick. Yeah, at 9 a.m. Central U.S. Standard Time. So, let's do the content briefing. This game is kind of a guided on rails game. It's the opposite of an open world game. So the content briefing is pretty much what I have to talk about. That said, there's a couple explanations I want to give at the end that are included as the wrap up of the content briefing that will take a little bit more discussion. So let's go ahead and get started. The ESRB rating here for A Plague Tale: Innocence is mature 17 plus for blood and gore, strong language, and violence. And it says this is an adventure game in which players assume the role of a girl fleeing hardship and struggle in 14th century France. From a third-person perspective, players avoid swarms of rats and use stealth tactics to sneak around soldiers. One method of deterring rats is to lure them to corpses or soldiers who are shown screaming as they are bitten or eaten. Cutscenes depict characters being impaled by swords, struck by arrows or maces, and stabbed by spears. Some game environments contain corpses that have been impaled, burned, or partially eaten or mutilated, sometimes with entrails visible. The F word and SH word appear in the dialogue. Okay, moving on to Common Sense Media, which is kind of my go-to one. They rate it at age 16 plus and call it a gripping, bloody tale of siblings against impossible odds. In their rating section, they give it 4 out of 5 stars for positive messages, 4 out of 5 for positive role models, which I'm going to touch on here in a minute, 4 out of 5 on ease of play, 5 out of 5 stars on violence, or for them, it's not stars, it's dots, but you get the picture. They say sex is not present, language gets 3 out of 5 stars, consumerism is not present, and drinking, drugs, and smoking get 2 out of 5 stars. In their description, which is what I really come here for, it says parents need to know that A Plague Tale: Innocence is a stealth action adventure game available for the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Windows PCs. The game is set in 1349 and casts players as Amicia Darun, a young teenage girl who's suddenly forced to take care of her ailing brother when their home is invaded and attacked by the Inquisition, along with an even worse supernatural threat. Now, those two things right there, that's going to be the second thing that I talk about. So I'm going to talk about positive role models, and I'm going to talk about this section here, when their home is invaded and attacked by the Inquisition, along with an even worse supernatural threat. Over time, both kids reluctantly grow into leadership positions and heroes as they move through the land. That's also a key part of my point number 1. Aiding others and leading a group of orphaned kids to safety against incredible odds. There's quite a lot of violence, mainly caused by swarming rats that strip anything they come across to the bone, spraying blood in the process. Amicia can use a sling to take out human opponents, although she expresses regret and remorse at these actions. Some scenes also take place on a battlefield or in towns, with many bodies and body parts strewn about in gruesome ways. There is occasional use of the words hell, bastard, and the SH word. Don't forget also the F-bombs. In the dialogue and scenes where players find enemy soldiers drunk or asleep with bottles strewn around them. Alcohol can also be collected and used to craft items. Okay, the 2 points that I want to talk about. Point number 1, positive role models, particularly or specifically positive female role models for young girls, for young women. This is an example of positive female role models done correctly, in my opinion. It's really well done. Now, what do I mean? What am I contrasting that to? Well, the example that comes to mind for me, and different people may feel different ways on this because it was kind of a controversy, but I think more people agree with me on this. I don't know. If you disagree, rant away in the comments. I'm not going to do anything about it. I won't respond to you or anything. This is more to set up a compare and contrast, okay? But Rey from Star Wars, she is what is known, I guess, a literary device called a Mary Sue. It means that she doesn't have any faults. Okay, that is contrasted with what has been, I think, dating all the way back to the ancient Greeks, the classic storytelling narrative called the hero's journey. This has been used in everything from novels to fables to movies to plays. The hero's journey gives you a structure, an outline to craft your story around, and it basically says you begin with a flawed and vulnerable character. They lack skills, they have character defects, and then through the course of the various adversities that they face in your story, they develop the skills and develop their character, and they overcome these defects. And that is, in essence, the human tapestry, and that's why it resonates with people so strongly. Ray was anything but that. This is what we call a Mary Sue. She didn't have any flaws. She didn't have any defects. She maybe had a little bit of victim to her, which is not necessarily bad. That's actually kind of pulls your emotions in. I don't want to riff on that, in other words, but she did have things in her that were designed to make you sympathetic towards her, but she did not have any defects. And that's, I think it's my opinion, because her character was written with the authors having female empowerment in their minds and hearts. That was their end all be all objective. When you do that, you have changed the motivations for your character, and they created a character that didn't have anything to overcome, and it gave her no character arc at all. It made her very bland, very vanilla, and you just kind of already knew what was coming up with her. I have heard people try to compare her to Anakin and be like, well, Anakin had all these abilities when he was young. It was completely, totally different. You didn't see Anakin doing any force tricks. You didn't see Anakin being able to master a lightsaber really early on. You didn't see Anakin being able to use Jedi mind tricks without any training whatsoever. What you did see Anakin do is he was a prodigy. That's the term that we would use. We have this in the real world. You have children who display innate abilities at things, and they can pick it up very quickly, but they're still raw. A child prodigy at the piano still doesn't know how to play the piano. It's just that they learn it very quickly. Okay. So with Anakin, you did have a point in time where he was able to rely on his instincts. His instincts were very good, but these are still just raw elements that need to be developed. Rey was different. Rey displayed actual Jedi skill and things without training. She just knew it intuitively and was able to do it, or was able to pick it up extremely rapidly and much more rapidly than what I was just talking about. That makes for a flat character. Okay. Why did I bring all that up? Because A Plague Tale: Innocence doesn't do that. It goes the opposite direction. Not only does it show the character's frailty and vulnerability, Amicia, and Hugo as well, but Amicia is the main character here. It doesn't just show that. It doesn't shy away from it. It doesn't shield it off. It doesn't write around it. It shows it. And not only does it show it, but it makes it front and center. It actually showcases it. And it is because she's extremely vulnerable. One, as a child, and then secondly, as a female, surrounded by veteran knights who have combat experience, full grown men, who are out to get her. And because of that, because she's facing situations that it's extremely likely that she could be killed, because she's facing situations emotionally that would be overwhelming to most people, and she's finding ways to overcome it. Well, that's what makes her courageous. You can't be courageous without having the opportunity to also be cowardly. You can't be noble without also having the opportunity to be dastardly. And she is faced with these things, and she comes out on top through willful choice, despite herself, her own lack, and her surrounding circumstances, which are bordering impossible. And so you end up having a character that's extremely relatable. and a character that really pulls on your heartstrings because you can see she's in a terrible situation all of the time. All of the time. She's in terrible situations and she's having to face this constantly. And it's just really it's what inspires you about her and makes you think of her as courageous and things like that. So I thought that was really well done. And then Hugo the same way. These characters, because of their fragility and their vulnerability, are going to really pull on your heartstrings. And I would even venture to say that it's the parents that are going to have it's the adults in the room that will have their heartstrings pulled even more so than any kids that are playing the game or watching you play it. Okay, keep in mind the ages, but you make your own judgment off of that. On the Common Sense Media, it said 16 plus, but there was a section where other people have voted and they said 12 plus. It's just kind of up to you. The second thing I wanted to bring up was the religious aspect. And I wanted to bring this up because I could see it as being very plausible that somebody who is of a religious persuasion, and in particular of a Christian religious perspective, may see the trailers for this game or play the opening chapters and think, oh, here we go again. This is going to be another video game that just throws Christianity under the bus. And I think that there's a reason for people to think that. I think, number one, directly related to anti-Christian feelings is the fact that with Christianity, you are free to critique it and slur it and mock it and say really, truly offensive things and not really face any repercussions beyond maybe a mean thing said back towards you. Now, that's in stark contrast to some other religions out there. So Christianity is available. It makes itself available to be attacked and critiqued and argued over and mocked and all that. So if you're making a game and you want to speak against religion, it's a soft target. That's what I'm trying to show. Christianity is a bit of a soft target. I don't know that there's anything else out there, given the political climate, that you can really get away with that like you can with attacking Christianity. I can't think of another belief system that is more of a soft target. That's kind of my point. So there's one aspect. The other aspect I think is actually not anti-religious, but it can come across as being anti-religious. And that other aspect is that in Western civilization nations, Christianity forms the basis of a lot of society and the basis for a number of moral views, as well as a basis for the, I guess, governmental systems and the idea of how justice is done and things of that nature. It's like the framework and the pillars of many Western civilization nations. Well, when you are an atheist, you're going to kind of kick against that, I think, by nature. Okay, or if you have an axe to grind because maybe you tried to go to church when you were young and you were treated horribly by church people, or maybe even the priest or the preacher did something inexcusably evil to you, right? And so now you have an axe to grind. There's room for that. But what I want to point out is there is also room that just simply because it forms the majority, a hugely instrumental base for your entire system of society, that there's going to be a natural kickback to when it comes to critical thinking. People are going to want to challenge presuppositions. And that doesn't necessarily have to be anti-religious. It's more challenging presuppositions. We have challenging of presuppositions right now in a whole slew of areas that have nothing to do with religion, right? So those are the reasons why a Christian might find themselves a little bit cagey on here. Now, here's why I think that's not the case. Now, mind you, I am on chapter 11. I have not finished this game yet, but it's only 17 chapters, so I'm more than halfway through. And you'll even hear me do commentary throughout the game on this, where I'm saying things like, this game reminds me of Fable, the very first Fable game, and I can't really put my finger on why. Or I say it reminds me of classic Disney cartoons, which were, if I recall correctly, if I'm right about this, were sort of loosely based on the Aesop fable template. And again, I can't really describe exactly why, but as I talk about it, I start kind of figuring it out. And what I'm figuring out is that they blended fantasy and mysticism with historical fiction. Okay. So with the, I want to kind of wrap this up here, but with the historical fiction, there was really a Spanish Inquisition. Did the Spanish Inquisition do the things that are displayed in this game? No, not exactly. That's why it's historical fiction, but it's based on kind of their demeanor and some things that were their attitude and aggressiveness was that is history. That's recorded history. So you have a historical fiction context there. The Black Plague really did happen, and it really did spread through rats. Did it spread in the way that these rats operate? No. And that's where you have the fantasy. You have alchemy present in here, where they're finding potential cures and potions and stuff like that. Did that really happen? Well, you had alchemists back in the day, so that's historical. And now you have a story that's featuring alchemists, so there's your historical fiction. But could you really turn lead into gold? And that's not displayed in this game, but that's one of the things that alchemists believed you could do. No, you can't. That's mythical. That's mythical, right? Fantasy, mythical, mysticism. And so you have these blending of things. And what I started to figure out was, I think what they're doing is that they have. Now I didn't have the name for it until I read something, but what I say is they are blending fantasy and the mythical with historical fiction, and that's making for a really neat story. I've heard that some people got disappointed with this game because it wasn't historically accurate. They kind of thought they were getting into a historically accurate game. It's not. It's a historical fiction. It gives you the basis for a mythological tale. And if you can understand that, if you're going in it the other way, what you're doing is that maybe you like strawberries, but you think you're about to bite into chocolate and you get a strawberry instead, and now you hate that taste. You don't, it's not that you hate strawberries forever, but that in that moment you do not like the taste that's in your mouth because you were expecting chocolate. It doesn't mean that you hate strawberries. You just don't like it at the moment. And I think that's what people are doing, is they're entering into this with a wrong perception. So I was reading an article on this game as I was looking for pictures, and one of the pictures was embedded in this article, looking for pictures to use for my thumbnails. And lo and behold, the developers themselves said the same thing. They said that they pulled exceedingly off of fairy tales, and I thought that word captured it. This game is telling a fairy tale within the structure of late 14th century France, a historical fiction framework. And so you have the Inquisition and the church present. But what it is not doing, as far as I can tell, at least up to this point, is it's not demonizing Christianity. It's a different thing altogether. It's a historical fiction providing the framework around a fairy tale. So it's kind of more in common with The Sword and the Stone. So there you go. And I hope that, I'm not expecting that everybody will agree with me, but I am trying to paint a picture of one man's opinion, and so that you can make a decision. And it's a gripping tale. It really pulls at your heartstrings. These kids are in very vulnerable positions all of the time. And it's very, very, it's been very interesting so far. So I will wrap it up off of that. Again, I'm Aesop Grem. Thanks for coming by the channel. I hope you like what you saw. I hope all is well in your neck of the woods. And I will see you in the next episode where this story begins.